ifs, no buts. This story is truly nuts. £15 billion is what we'll be spending to house asylum seekers. It will rise to more than £4 million a day over the 10 contracts that have been given over to various companies. This is triple Home Office expectations. The average yearly cost expected to be higher than the amount ministers hope to save from cutting the winter fuel payment, as the Daily Express points out. Let's let that hang in the air for a moment. So all the pain they've taken, quite rightly, by the way, for the winter fuel payment, it is now be higher to house asylum seekers. Now, I did ask the Home Secretary about the use of asylum hotels in November of last year, and she told me back then that they would end their use, but, of course, pinned the blame on the previous Conservative administration.
So we need to end the asylum hotels, and this is costing a fortune for the taxpayer, as well as being really the consequences of an asylum system that had just the Conservatives lost control of, and we need to get a grip of that. So when we came in July, what we found was that the previous government has effectively stopped taking asylum decisions. So they were down by about 75% in terms of the number of decisions that they were taking. That meant the backlog was soaring. So we were warned we would need a substantial increase in asylum accommodation over the summer and into the autumn. We've managed to prevent that. We've managed to avoid that by getting those asylum decisions being made again. And the consequence of what we're doing is a result is saving not just hundreds of millions of pounds, but actually billions of pounds over the next few years.
What don't they get? What don't they get? This country has had enough with this uncontrolled immigration. It doesn't matter whether it's called the Brexit Party, UKIP, or now Reform. Consistently they do well in local elections, by-elections. Governments of both colours say, yes, we've got the message, we're listening. Sir Keir Starmer saying we're going further and faster last week. Well, that's my analogy again. If you're going the wrong way in the M1, I'll tell you what, darling, let's go. I'm going to up the speed and go even further the wrong way up the M1. Are you nuts? If they vote UKIP, they vote Brexit, they vote Reform. People have had enough, and not enough is being done. March this year, Minister for Border Security and Asylum, God knows what she does all day, Dame Angela Eagle telling a panel of MPs she couldn't put a date on when the use of asylum hotels might end.
I can't give her a date when hotels will close, but I can say that we're doing our best, given the huge cost and the contracts that we inherited from the party opposite for providing them being so expensive. It will certainly be in the interests of saving lots of money to close them as soon as we can, and we're certainly aiming to do so.
So let's blame the Conservatives again then. Because it's these people, these Labour politicians, they were living on another planet. It's not as if they'd had 14 years to study the Conservatives' failure, and indeed to lecture us continually on radio shows such as these, in newspaper articles and in the House of Commons. They weren't aware of any of it, because they just visited from another planet, weren't they? No, absolute nuts again. Now, what of Reform after their sweeping local election victories last week? The party's newly elected mayor for Greater Lincolnshire, Dame Andrea Jenkins, said she wants to abolish the use of asylum hotels and put up tents instead.
We will tackle illegal migration. We've been working on policies. I say no to putting people in hotels. Tents are good enough for France. They should be good enough for here in Britain.
So what have the Danes learnt, where, you can read, they've confronted the problem with considerable success? Rafe Hedel-Manku is historian, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. I guess we better start chronologically, if we may. How big a problem was it perceived to be in Copenhagen and in Denmark? Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, it was an extremely serious issue in Denmark, although compared to Britain, actually, it was a drop in the ocean. But to put it in context, in the 1980s, 1990s, only 1% of Denmark was composed of foreign nationals. Thanks to illegal immigration, that had risen to 9% by 2015 or so. And the scale of the change was so dramatic, and the impact that was having on local communities, on public services, and just generally the community cohesion began to fray in what was and what had been a very, very cohesive society. So Denmark embarked.
Was that being expressed at the ballot box, Rafe? Sorry to interrupt, but were politicians actually getting the message by whatever similar local by-elections go on over there, Rafe?
Precisely. You had exactly the same sort of feeling of public unrest, but the Danes were listening. And what's remarkable about the Danish situation is that there was consensus across the political spectrum. So you had the left and the right both understanding the need to take draconian measures. And in fact, the prime minister who imposed the most draconian measures of all was the leader of the left-wing party, and a former trade union leader, saying things you could never imagine Keir Starmer or Angela Rayner saying. And the policy essentially was a term we've heard before, a hostile environment. But it was a genuine hostile environment, not the sort of milquetoast hostile environment that Theresa May tried to create.
What did it mean on the streets then, Rafe?
So that meant, when you arrived, you had your benefits were cut by 50% from what they had been. There was a jewelry tax. So any assets you had on you, any jewelry, any cash, anything like that would be confiscated from you, and that would be used to be spent looking after you. They would take out ads in foreign newspapers in these trouble spots saying, "Don't come to Denmark, it's very unpleasant." And the messaging here was very clear. Don't come to Denmark, stay in Germany, stay in France, anywhere is better than coming here. And it's had huge success because it's actually, the levels have gone down to levels not seen since the 1990s in terms of illegal immigration. And remarkably, the left-wing Danish Prime Minister said her goal was to have zero asylum applications in her country. Again, something you could never imagine someone in the Labour Party here saying. And the Swedes have actually gone a step further, actually, since they had so much trouble. Of course, Sweden, the centre for rape in Europe. Sweden also the centre for bombing attacks, all due, of course, or much of it due to illegal immigration. That's brought in a right-wing government. And for the first time in half a century, Sweden now has negative net immigration. More people are leaving the country because of this hostile environment. And they're also encouraging voluntary remigration by paying people 30,000 kroner to leave the country. And if you're a family of 4 or 5, that's a hefty chunk of cash to start up a new life.
What would that be in sterling? 30,000 kroner, Rafe. Sorry, you've got me on that.
I think it's around. I can't. But it's anyways. It's several thousand euros.
Okay. Grateful for all your input and comprehensive knowledge. Thank you, Rafe Hadelmanku is historian and senior fellow with the New Culture Forum. 13 after 7. Zoe Gardner is independent migration researcher. £15 billion over the next 10 years or so. Surely that means we need to bring an end to this system. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Yeah, totally agree. We should have brought an end to it long ago, and we should bring an end to it tomorrow. This is ridiculous. All that money going into the hands of private corporations that have made an absolute killing off of horrible, poor quality accommodation that isn't working as a system as a whole.
So what would work, Zoe?
Well, what we should be doing is letting these people work so that they can start contributing to the cost of their own accommodation. That is the first and most obvious.
But they might be illegal.
Well, I don't really understand that question. Sorry, what do you mean?
Well, their claim for asylum might not be a valid one.
Well, I mean, then they're still in the asylum procedure, same as before.
Well, then they'll vanish, won't they?
Well,
once you give them funds, won't they just go off radar, as it's called?
But I mean, we're currently supporting them in hotels and providing them with food.
But the answer is tents, isn't it, as the Reform Mayor says?
Well, actually, no, that's not the answer.
Why?
Well, because firstly, it's morally abhorrent to talk about leaving homeless people.
It's also morally abhorrent that people drown in the Channel, of course.
Well, yes, agreed.
So we need to don't we need to make it plain that this country, if you get here, we have a sort of hostile environment, as has worked in some Scandinavian countries, Zoe?
Well, I think what we heard just now is really fascinating because, A, we do all those things that your previous caller talked about.
Do we? We take people's jewellery. I didn't know that.
We take out ads in foreign newspapers and in
people's jewellery, do we?
They don't come to the UK. We check what assets you have as an asylum seeker, and if you are able to support yourself and you have money, then you don't get provided with free accommodation. So it's the same thing essentially, except it's slightly less sinister and gross than saying we'll snatch your jewellery, which is. Obviously, if anybody's come here...
Do you not think it's gross that elderly people can't have the winter fuel allowance?
But I do. I think it's absolutely
I mean, that's what's gross to me, Zoe.
Disgusting. And I'll tell you what, elderly people are at real risk in this country if we went down the route of those Nordic countries that we were just talking about, if we had negative immigration in this country, that would be a disaster. We would no longer be able to pay pensions. We would have nobody staffing our care homes. Elderly people will be the first to suffer if we were to go down an even more hostile
Well, maybe
route.
we could get some of our
What
indigenous
we should be doing
population
is
to
just
work.
letting them work. They can do all these jobs that we have desperate need for in our economy. We have, the baby boomer generation.
I
Nick.
do. You're talking to
My,
one.
yeah, and it's my parents' generation, and I want to see them well looked after. But they're reaching retirement now. They're called baby boomers because there's a lot of them, right?
There are a
We're
lot of us.
shifting in our demographic now. That group of people reaching retirement and moving out of the labour market is a serious challenge to our future.
Give my best regards to your parents who are fellow baby boomers. Zoe Gardner, thank you for your input. You're an independent migration researcher. There are the two sides of the story. We'll take your view on that.